The Senate will come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Senators Baisley, Bridges,
Excused.
Buckner,
Excused.
Coleman, Cutter, Danielson,
Excused.
Exum, Fields,
Excused.
Gardner, Janal, Gonzalez, Hanson, Henriksen, Huckes Lewis, Kirkmeyer, Kolker, Senator Kolker,
Excused.
Liston, Lundin, Marchman, Michelson Janae,
Excused.
Mullica, Pelton B, Pelton R, Priola, Rich, Roberts, Rodriguez, Simpson, Smallwood, Sullivan, Van Winkle, Will, Winter, Zenzinger, Senator Danielson, Senator Buckner, thank you. Senator Kolker, Fields, Bridges, Mr. President.
Here. Morning roll call is 32 present, 0 absent, 3 excused. We do have a quorum. Senator Zenzinger, would you please lead us in the pledge?
For the last time, at least for me anyway, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance.
Approval of the journal. Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood. Senator Smallwood.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. No. Yeah, I move that the Senate Journal of August 28th be approved by the Secretary.
Wow. Went the classic. Just classic.
Approved as corrected.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. It won't be corrected. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it and the motion is adopted. Senate Services.
August 29, 2024, correctly revised HB 24B 1001 and HB 24B 1003.
Introduction of resolutions. Majority Leader Rodriguez. Oops, sorry. Let's let the clerk read it.
August 29, 2024, the following resolution was read by title. Senate Joint Resolution 24B 001 by Senators Rodriguez, Finberg, Lundin, also Representative Duran, McCluskey, Pugliese, concerning adjournment sine die of the second extraordinary session of the 74th General Assembly.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I moved that SJR 001 lay over until later in the day.
The motion is to lay over Senate Joint Resolution 1 until later in the day. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Senate Joint Resolution 1 will lay over until later in the day. Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that a committee be appointed to notify the governor when the Senate is ready to adjourn sine die.
Is there any objection? You guys all really want to go home? Seeing none, Senator Zenzinger and Henriksen and will are appointed to notify the governor that the Senate is ready to adjourn sine die. Third reading of bills. Final passage. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 24B 1001?
House Bill 24B 1001 by Representatives McCluskey and Pugliese, Senators Hansen and Kirkmeyer, concerning property tax.
Senator Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move House Bill 1001 on third reading and final passage.
To the bill.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Members, a few thoughts to share with you this morning. I was reserving most of my comments for this morning because I think this is the right way to wrap up what I would call a 6-year process. And I wanted to spend just a moment to talk about the arc of this story because we have been on a long journey together. Now, we know that legislative memories can sometimes be short. There are structural reasons for that, term limits among them, notwithstanding our good senator from Brighton, who's been here with 16 years of legislative memory, and our good colleague from El Paso County who shares the same length of that story. But it goes back even further than that because the voters of Colorado passed the Gallagher Amendment in 1982. So that, I think, is probably the right place to start this story because now, almost 40 years later, the voters of Colorado decided to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. And it was in 2018 when two great colleagues, Representative Esgar, Senator Rankin, chaired an interim committee on property taxes. And one of the conclusions they reached was the Gallagher Amendment was not working for the state of Colorado. There were a lot of reasons for that. It was a bipartisan conclusion and one shared by a broad coalition of right, left, and center that we needed to repeal the Gallagher Amendment. I was pleased to sponsor the resolution that put that on the ballot, myself and Senator Rankin. And so that reached the ballot in the 2020 cycle, and nearly 58% of voters said, yes, we should remove the Gallagher Amendment from the Colorado Constitution. I believe that was an incredibly important step in our state's history because one of the many impacts of the Gallagher Amendment was a severe degradation of school funding. It had led over 40 years for a steady erosion of local share for our schools and was a massive contributing factor, not the only one, but a massive contributing factor to the negative factor. And the negative factor has always been personal for me because this year I have a senior in high school. We are doing visits to colleges. It's one of the funnest parts about being a dad. But unfortunately, he has been in public school for the entire length of the negative factor. Think about what that has done to a generation of children. And I am glad that this body was able to end it in last year's budget. Finally, end it. But it's not going to help the generation of kids who lived through it. We had to do better, and we finally did. But why could we end the negative factor? We ended the negative factor because we repealed the Gallagher Amendment and created a stable situation for local share to contribute to the education of our children. Now, we always knew when we repealed the Gallagher Amendment that we would then need to put in a framework for sustainable property tax relief for our constituents. We started that work in earnest in the 2020 session. Myself and Senator Rankin and our colleagues passed a series of bipartisan bills over the next 3 sessions offering that relief. Unfortunately, we were not able to find a long-term package, and so had to settle for 1- and 2-year relief packages. I am proud of that work. Those were not failures. Those are responses to the conditions which we faced at that time. Most of you in the room were here for that episode. We did good work. We had a number of stakeholders who were not ready to make a long-term deal. There's no need to recount all of those. But those 1 and 2 year relief packages helped our constituents and helped the state get through a very tumultuous time. We all know what was happening in our world in March of 2020. We all know what that did to our lives, our health system, and unfortunately the many folks who did not survive that pandemic. It also had a significant impact on our property market. Massive amounts of out-of-state money coming to buy properties in Colorado because suddenly remote work was much more available. That led to giant changes in our property market. That meant that our property tax system was under pressure. We all know that. We heard it from our constituents. So the story continues into the 2023 session, continues into the spring of 2024, and the massive amount of work that went into the Property Tax Commission and eventually led to Senate Bill 233. We delivered a long-term, sustainable framework, more than $1 billion of immediate relief, and importantly, took the concept that we have used for senior homestead exemptions and applied it to everybody in the state. 10% off the first $700,000 of value, helping particularly low and middle income households. That was a huge step forward for the state of Colorado in Senate Bill 233. Fast forward to this moment on House Bill 1001. We are here to finish that work. What did that process look like? There have been folks in this building and folks outside this building who have made, I believe, the false claim that this was somehow cooked up with 3 or 4 people in a dark room with cigars, I guess. A backroom deal, as it has been labeled by those who don't understand this process. In late July, I was asked to join a series of discussions to look at a possible compromise deal that would lead to this bill that we're looking at today. Several meetings later, we had developed a framework. That was then shared on August 9th broadly with the Property Tax Commission. That led to a public meeting of the Property Tax Commission to discuss that framework on August the 12th. A public meeting where we took input from dozens of stakeholders. And that framework was then shared more widely with dozens of additional groups and everyone in the legislature. August 12th. We followed that with a meeting on August the 23rd of the Property Tax Commission where we discussed not just a framework deal, but an actual draft piece of legislation. That was followed by public release of the full bill draft, and then eventually introduction of the bill on the first day of the special session, followed by public committee hearings where we took testimony from the public. I think a dispassionate observer would come to the conclusion that this was a public process. I reject the notion that we are somehow operating behind closed doors and do not bring the important decisions to the public part of our process. So let's finish the story. House Bill 1001, in my mind, is a small extension to what we did in Senate Bill 233. And these extensions are based on the fact that we have new data. We have new information. Our 2-year assessment cycle ends on June 30th. We now have the information that indicates that assessed value is going to be slightly higher than we anticipated when we did Senate Bill 233 back during the regular session. That allows us the space to do these extensions. I also want to make the point about the backfill discussion that happened in this bill and in Senate Bill 233. How do we support the places where there is perhaps flat or negative assessed value growth? Well, we have done that, and we continue to do that in this bill, and that process will play out in the spring. But it also highlights the need for us to have more cooperation at the local government level, have ways to look for efficiencies in how we deliver these services. That's a good thing. I think everyone in this room can agree that we have opportunities for more cooperation to help control costs at the local government level, particularly in places where there is not a growing assessed value tax base. What else did we accomplish with this bill? We ended a cycle of destructive ballot initiatives. We have an agreement that that will continue for the next 3 cycles. So at least until 2030, we have stopped what were going to be devastating ballot initiatives being brought forward by special interest groups in this state. I'm proud to be a part of that effort. So as we think about the arc of this story, perhaps going all the way back to 1982, what have we accomplished? We have ended the negative factor. I'm so proud to be a part of that work. So many people in this room have contributed thousands of hours to that end goal. And one of the key pieces of that is a stable, sustainable framework for property tax in the state of Colorado. We have also created a stable framework for better support of higher education and our medical system and local services. That is also a huge win here. When I decided to run for office in 2015, the top 2 things that I wanted to accomplish in my time in the legislature were, 1, to make Colorado a leader in the fight against climate change. Number 2 was to untie this Gordian knot of Tabor and Gallagher and its negative impact on our kids. That's why I quit my job and ran for office. That is why I have put my family through 10 years of the sacrifices of being in public service. Today marks an important moment in that journey. We have untied this knot together. We have done it in a bipartisan way. We have put our education system on a sustainable path. We have put higher ed in the best position it has been in a decade. I am proud of that work. I'm proud to stand here with my co-sponsor and to work with Republicans and Democrats around the state to accomplish this goal. My friends in this chamber, I thank you for being a part of this journey, and I ask for an aye vote on House Bill 1001.
Senator Hawkins Lewis. And will the clerk please add Senators Bridges and Fields to the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for all the work that has been done leading us for today, but we heard there was new information. And I have new information. That's why I wanted to speak on thirds, which I typically don't do. Colleagues, we were presented a very challenging decision for all of us being forced to work on and approve a deal under the assumption that the deal would avert these catastrophic impacts of the careless and basically immoral statewide ballot measures of 50 and 108. But unfortunately, the deal still decreases revenues that will have an adverse consequence to many school districts and local government services. And as we heard yesterday, fire services, mental health services, and services that our communities, our local communities rely on. We know that 50 and 108 were going to put us in such an extreme position that the state would be held responsible for millions and millions of dollars. So we know we had to do something about that. That's a given. But what this deal does is it still leaves us in the hole for $271 million in property cuts for 2026. And the new information that I received that I just felt compelled to share is what is going to happen to one of my counties, Boulder County. I'm disappointed that this deal is going to cost Boulder County almost $5 million in 2025 alone, and $4.93 million in 2026. And the programs that will be impacted are programs that are near and dear to our communities: wildfire mitigation, behavioral health services, alternatives to incarceration. When we do flat reductions in assessment rate, that basically benefits those whose property is worth more. The biggest cuts are going to go to those who have the biggest homes. And that's why I feel like we could have done more. So what did we miss? What I think we could have done was to think about how we can get the data that we're going to need to make our property tax assessment system, our tax policy, more fair. And what that is data from our county assessors. I wish that this bill had included that, a better process to understand the balance between how many primary residents we have in counties and how many folks have multiple homes. Our county assessors, at least my county assessor, would love to have the ability to do that. And it's easy. We do it now. We track data for homestead exemptions for seniors. We track it for Gold Star families. We track it for veterans. In fact, qualified disabled veterans, Gold Star spouses, can receive 50% of the first $200,000 value of their home value exempted in property tax, and they start it on the 1st of January of the year that the veteran or the Gold Star family member is applying. It's easy for them to do. 18 states are already doing this. 18 states offer a homestead exemption only for the primary residents. We're not one of them. Colorado is not one of them. We talk about equity and responsible governance in this chamber all the time. Tax benefits and burdens should be distributed fairly among taxpayers. We need more fairness in our tax policy, and we could have done that here with this bill. We could have put a data piece asking county assessors to do that, because we don't know. We don't know how many people have primary residence or second homes in a county or in our state. And without that knowledge, how can we do a balanced and fact-based tax policy? Gathering data doesn't increase taxes for anyone. It doesn't decrease taxes either. It's about making sure we are planning properly for our future decisions. Our committee that is going to be continuing forward work in tax policy, they need better data. So that's why I'm disappointed in this bill. I wish the deal had been able to contain the ability for us to get more data, and I challenge us, colleagues, to come back in January and to let's fix that. Let's start to collect this information. Thank you.
Senator Chenal.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're all here today and have been for the last 4 days to help protect the people and the citizens, our citizens in Colorado. And we're here to avoid some ballot measures that would have catastrophic effects for our state and our local governments. This is the fourth attempt in 2 years to provide sufficient property tax relief. And now, with 1001, we will not just have to come back every 2 years and look at this, but we at least have a time frame of 6 years. And that will be very helpful for our citizens as well as for our legislature. I've listened to my county, I've listened to my assessor, treasurers. I've also listened to the tax commission, okay? I don't usually, it's not my wheelhouse. I listened on the floor of the House and the Appropriations Committee of the House, as well as the Senate Appropriations Committee. I listened to everything, and this is not an easy bill. It's not an easy topic for most of us, and I can attest to that. I commend the bill sponsors, and I commend the Tax Commission for your hard work on this bill. This may be the fourth try. I don't think it's going to be the last. I know there's a lot more to make it better for our citizens, but I represent Senate District 14, Fort Collins, Larimer County, and I want to make sure that our local governments don't have to make disastrous cuts, especially number one, and this is my favorite one, that's why it's number one, okay? It's not ranked, but our seniors. Our seniors always get cut. They seem to be the first to get cut, and I hope there's someone next year and in the future years that's going to take the reins and look after our seniors. Also, child welfare. Devastating. We need to keep child welfare monies flowing, as well as those people with disabilities. Our law enforcement, the cuts to our law enforcement, as well as to our fire districts. You know, Larimer County has had catastrophic wildfires and floods. We need our fire districts, as well as our health departments, and we also need to continue to help our small businesses. There's also going to be tough choices and cuts that would affect our educational system. From our school districts, in my case, Poudre School District, to our institutions of higher education. Folks, CSU is in Senate District 14. I'm a graduate of Colorado State University. It's, to me, one of the best land-grant colleges that we have in this country. Definitely the best veterinary college in this country, and for many other reasons. I am concerned that if this bill doesn't pass, there would be layoffs, and there would be tuition increases, which may cause students who want to attend to make another choice. Maybe they wouldn't want that second choice, but they might have to. Or they might have to drop out altogether. So this bill, although not perfect, it does provide additional relief for our educational system. From local school districts to our higher institutions, in my case, Colorado State University. Is it perfect? No. We wouldn't be here, or we wouldn't be talking about it up here. But I don't want to endanger the path forward for the citizens of Larimer County or for the state of Colorado. And I, again, no, this is a very difficult bill, although we've been over some of these parts in 233. But I stand in support of House Bill 1001. I think it's a great a solution, let's say, for the next 6 years, and hopefully with all the folks involved, that we will be able to put together better legislation to help our citizens, not only in my county, Larimer County, but also in the state of Colorado.
Senator Baisley.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, colleagues. As much as we might want to be doing something else, it's an honor to be serving with all of you yet again in this special session. I want to express appreciation for all the hard work that so many people came together to create House Bill 24B-1001. It was a lot of work, a lot of compromising that went into this, and there's much to be lauded and appreciated for all the people that worked on this. So thank you for that, trying to bring relief. I want to just express my concern and frankly disappointment in not addressing the underlying issue that got us here in the first place. And that is that we base the founding principles of determining property taxes on the value of the property. And that's a foundation on shifting sand. That's something that we can't even necessarily predict, that's going to wildly swing. And it did so a couple of years ago when our property values just shot up, and therefore all the taxing will then shoot up right along with that. We have met now in this body, in the entire legislature, last year, and finally coming out in the last couple days of the session last year with Senate Bill 303, that then placed before the people Proposition HH, which the people wisely rejected because it was going to tamper with their Tabor refunds. That, of course, caused the special session to be called at the end of November last year, and now we're back again with Senate Bill 233 this year, which came from a task force that I'm honored to be a member of, the Property Tax Commission. And in the meantime, the people are rising up and signing hundreds of thousands of petitions to place a couple of measures on the ballot to be voted on to address this issue. All of these have to do with that single element, which is that taxation is based on the value of the property. So if we can imagine, it's three primary multipliers. One is the mills that are assigned to your address to support your local special districts and county, and then there's the tax rate, and there's your property value. All of those are pretty steady except for the property value. The property value can swing wildly, and it has recently. But with the property value climbing so rapidly did not mean that there is a new need for that similar climb in funding for the special districts, for the library district, for the water district, or the fire districts. Similarly, if the property values were to drop by 25%, for instance, that would not mean that our fire districts needed 25% less money. This is just a shifting sand foundation that we had the opportunity to correct. I proposed that twice for this body, one within the tax commission, and then in a bill that I introduced early this week that was rejected in the committee. So what we have, instead of a 3-page correction to the formula, we have 43 pages here of patchwork that has taken all of these efforts over 18 months to try to resolve. And the people are asking us for relief, which I appreciate the work, but this work required 43 pages because the foundation is on shifting sand. We need to fix the foundation. So while I appreciate all the efforts that went into this, I'm disappointed that we didn't fix the underlying problem in the first place. So I'll be a respectful no on the vote today, but I think we need to reconsider how we're doing this. Let's just fix that single underlying problem and have a much more predictable and much more steady budget for all of our services that we expect from our local governments, and hopefully not come back here every year like we've done 2 years in a row so far in special session to address the people's concern. Thank you, colleagues, for listening.
Senator Marchman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard work that we've all put into getting us through these very challenging times. The decisions that are in front of us are not easy, and I know that we've all struggled with how to best serve our communities. This bill is a big step forward in addition to SB 233, which is offering some much-needed relief, but I have a few reservations that I just need to share. Our goal has been clear: to help out Coloradans who are feeling the squeeze from rising property taxes, insurance, and inflation. We've tried to find a balance, giving people some immediate relief while still protecting the services our communities rely on. But as we prepare to vote, I cannot help but to think about the impact this bill may have on our schools, local governments, and special districts, the backbone of our state. The idea of them facing cuts is something that really weighs on me, and I think it weighs on all of you as well. So this highlights a bigger issue that we need to tackle, which my colleague actually spoke about, finding funding solutions that are sustainable and reliable. We cannot keep relying on quick fixes that leave our schools and governments in a tough spot. It's time we commit to finding policies that make sure these vital services have the consistent support that they need. As we move forward, let's also take a look at what other states are doing, like Utah, where property tax relief is tied to whether a property is occupied for at least 183 days a year, half the year. I think it's a smart idea, but I think we can build on it to better fit our needs here in Colorado. I would say that we could even extend that to include long-term rentals, those rented out for 183 days or more. This would help provide stable housing for folks who can't afford to buy a home, while giving landlords a partial tax break and recuperating some of the local property tax revenues. This could lower costs for renters, encourage long-term rentals, and keep things more fair in our tax system. It's really about making sure the relief goes where it's really needed, whether it's homeowners or renters who are helping to keep our neighborhoods vibrant. I'm also really encouraged by the governor's commitment to finding sustainable funding for our fire districts. These districts are so important in Larimer and Boulder counties, as my colleagues spoke about, especially as our wildfire risks continue to grow. Making sure we have that reliable funding is crucial, and I do want to thank the governor for taking this issue seriously and committing to a solution. I look forward to being a part of that conversation. Also, we've seen in Montana how legislators can actively participate in the ballot initiative process by discussing proposals, suggesting alternatives, and even placing those alternatives on the same ballot for voters to consider. If we were in Montana, we could have put SB 233 on the ballot with 108 and 50, and voters could have chosen between those solutions. We wouldn't be in this situation. That approach ensures the public's presented with the best possible options, and I believe we should mirror this strategy in Colorado. Passing this bill is not where our work ends. It should be the beginning of a serious reform. We need to keep looking for strategies that protect our communities from the financial challenges we're facing. I'm gently going to remind us of the obligations we've made around school finance, the new school finance formula, revenue sharing through TIFs, which just this year We spent $300 million to backfill, as well as the CSI MLO equalization, which in the past year cost us $49.1 million. This bill's passage will undoubtedly cause our voters to be subject to mill levy requests by local districts and governments. So this vote in this body is just one step in a bigger journey, and it's going to take all of us working together to find the solutions that support our communities, schools, and local governments. So I really appreciate the work we've done together. We have faced down some pretty tough ballot initiatives. We've protected Colorado's future. We overcame the frustrations and all the feelings that we've had with this process, with the policy, with the ballot initiatives, and there is more to do. As we vote on this bill, let's commit to continuing the important work of finding reliable and sustainable funding for our schools, governments, and districts. So finally, I just want to say thank you. It's nice to be here instead of in school. I'll be back there tomorrow. I deeply appreciate your dedication to the people of Colorado. I want to thank the sponsors and those who are involved in the negotiating. Together, I hope that we can build on this momentum we've started to create a solid financial foundation that not only addresses today's challenges, but also sets us up for a bright future. So vote your conscience. This is a tough one. I am going to be voting yes today. And I just thank you for being here to do this hard work this week.
Senator Kolker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, colleagues, for being here and taking the time this week to work on this. I know most of you think the senator from Loveland and I are connected at the hip in many things, and I'm going to first of all say that we did not converse about what we were both going to say today. And so you're going to hear some common themes, I believe, because we think along the same lines. Yesterday, I spoke in favor of this bill, along with the concerns I have with funding of specific items in the counties that I represent, Arapahoe and Jefferson County. What I didn't speak about was the actual cost and the choices we have as electeds. As electeds, we are responsible to our voters, the ones we meet at town halls, meet and greets. I have one tonight, by the way, 35 people coming, so I'm getting immediate feedback. I'm also knocking doors this afternoon, because this is another way we meet with people. And my campaign have already knocked over 3,000 doors just in the last month and a half. And this is what we're hearing from my constituents. And we hear from them at random moments in our communities, especially in my neighborhood or at the grocery store. We have a choice today, our vote, to either pass this limited property tax bill or not. We can let, I believe, an irresponsible special interest-led initiative onto the ballot that a majority of both of chambers think is awful for our schools, our firefighters, our law enforcement, and our human services, just to name a few. Or we can go to the voters with a 50-50 chance of gutting those services to our communities. As electeds, we are tasked with digging into policy, the nuances, the effects, and understanding it as representatives of our districts. We are supposed to take the time to make informed decisions, but because the people elected us to do so, because they don't always have the time. In fact, Senator Marchman, Senator from Loveland, and I convened a study group of electeds from both chambers open to the public to dig into this bill with the drafter and the economists, to do what we were sent here to do. I believe the average person spends about 5% of their annual time thinking about politics and policy. They spend usually that 5% right around the election. The average person's time is consumed with work, paying their bills, taking care of their kids, doing dishes, laundry, yard work, fixing problems that pop up. I have a garage door right now. It just is bugging the heck out of me, but trying to find the time to fix it is really hard for me. Medical issues and planning their meals. Think about that time that they spend with a little recreation mixed in. They expect us to do the policy work in the best interest of our community. As I said, I've knocked on thousands of doors already, and I am hearing from my voters concerns with two things: property taxes and public education funding, and they go hand in hand. Finding a balance of affordability and funding our critical public services is not easy. This bill is just the beginning to find that balance, because it is still costing our public services financial support. Arapahoe County, 16 cents of every dollar you pay in property taxes is kept by the county for services. Jeffco, only 24 cents of every dollar that you pay in property taxes is kept by the county. They're going to see revenue loss in these essential services: law enforcement, firefighting, and human services, to name just a few. What we're doing today is a calculated compromise to stave off more drastic cuts. So it is creating a new discussion to advocate for targeted relief to those most in need. I call on you, my colleagues, both here in this chamber and in the House, to support a more balanced approach building on the discussions over the last 4 days, to preserve the integrity of our public services and focus on the long-term well-being of our communities. And with that, I am a yes vote on this bill. Thank you.
Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I'll be brief. First of all, I just want to thank all the stakeholders for the many months and years of hard work on 1001, as well as the companion legislation, the preceding legislation. And, it's been a number of years. I remember having conversations with Senator Rankin about the beginnings of what has been done with the repeal of Gallagher. And this bill, I'm happy to say, really helps undo the negative externalities that Gallagher did through the years. Specifically, I've struggled with the impacts of the commercial side of what Gallagher year in or every 2 years would shift that ratio more and more towards the commercial side of property tax. And this bill will help create jobs and attract more business and back to the state and maintain those businesses that, when they look at their bottom line, when they look at the cost of employment and it's not just labor costs, but it's also costs of energy and it's cost of real estate. And property taxes are a huge impact for many businesses, depending on, how capital intensive your real estate needs are. So again, I just want to applaud the hard work. I know this is probably not the end, but to summarize what this bill and other bills have done, it's basically unwinding what Gallagher did over the decades. And I thank everybody, and I'll be a yes vote.
Senator Pelt.
Thank you, Mr. President. As one of the few people in this room that's made a budget from property taxes and mill levies and certified mill levies, I think that the biggest thing that we need to take from this is not only that this is a great compromise to go across, because it's not perfect. In fact, I told the good senator from Denver yesterday, this is not perfect. And because when I first heard about the state assessed tax going down, it kind of made me have a little bit of consternation, because my smaller counties, that's 40% of their budgets. That's hard on my smaller counties. But what's really hard is when I get to go in and have breakfast every Friday with my wife and my in-laws and I have the elderly folks in my community come up to my table and say, is there something you can do? Property taxes are hurting us. Is there something you can do? We have to pay triple the rate now on electricity from 3 to 7. And we have to keep we don't go anywhere from our house. Our homeowner's insurance has gone up, our car insurance has gone up, everything's going up, and now we're fixed income. Is there something you can do? This is what we can do. We can cut taxes. And it's not really cutting them lower, we're just decreasing the increase so it's not so hard. And county governments like myself, that I came from, we can share in the hurt a little bit. When I was a county commissioner, 5 out of 6 years, I voted to lower a mill levy. I'm not saying that I won every one of those years, because I didn't, but I did vote 5 out of 6 years to lower a mill levy. Because farmers did not see property taxes go down for 20 years. 20 years. But they're still getting $3 corn or $3.50 corn. But they're seeing their property taxes in incremental go up and up and up, and now they're paying higher fuel prices. Interest rates have hurting them on their loans that they have to be able to make the food that we eat. So if we can all share in the pain, this is perfect. I like this compromise. So I want to say thank you to the good senator from Denver and the good senator from Brighton. I was on the phone with her several times, having discussions about property taxes, because she knows it just, she was the one that taught me about it when we were county commissioners together. But I just got to say, this is a great compromise. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be, but I think this is the best way forward for all of Colorado. So I ask for an aye vote.
Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I just want to also reiterate my thanks to the sponsors for taking the lead in these discussions. I say taking the lead because we are all a part of these discussions. Whether you came in at the beginning or whether you came in at the end, we are all here. We are all at the table and we've all participated. And I just want to commend the senators who took the lead, who got us here to this place, and for providing the necessary leadership and driving all of us to the table so that we can complete and finish this work. It's necessary work. The median increase in property taxes in Jefferson County, my community, was 36.5%. That's really high, on top of a historic increase prior, on top of a historic increase prior to that. So it's not just about this year, it's also about the compounding effect of many years in a row and what the impact that is to our average citizen, to seniors who are on a fixed income, to young individuals who are in their first home, to renters, quite frankly, who would see the downstream effects of these higher property taxes if the owner of their dwelling has to cover those increases. And like many of you who've already spoken, I had concerns about the impacts of reducing revenues to local governments. I have concerns about the consequences of reducing revenues to our local governments and special districts. I specifically had some real serious concerns about whether or not we were going to be impacting school finance. But like many of you, this special session, while unexpected, perhaps a little bit inconvenient, I think was necessary. Today, we are making cuts, but we're making cuts with a scalpel versus a machete. We are making cuts that are responsible. They are going to be helpful, We are going to be able to protect things that mean a lot to me, in particular education, and we're going to be able to provide some relief. Again, it's not perfect because compromises are never perfect. This compromise is difficult, and I recognize that, and I think we all need to recognize that. But I also think it's necessary. I believe that it was an honor and a privilege to be able to be here at the table in this building working on this very difficult topic in order to serve and benefit the citizens of Colorado. And for that, I thank each of you, and I thank my colleagues.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I believe every senator in here, when creating or passing a bill, tries to get the best deal that they can for the citizens of Colorado. I believe that. That's what I wanted to do in working on this bill. What I've been working for is to get that best deal for the people of Colorado. This is a cap and cut property tax initiative bill. It's permanent. It's not temporary. It is an extension of 233. We got about 80% of the way there. It's 233. It's a small but very meaningful extension of 233. I agree with the good senator from Denver. In the last days of the legislative session that ended in May, we passed Senate Bill 24-233, which was a bipartisan agreement to lower property taxes while at the same time protecting the state budget. And yes, I did say, I said we could have probably gone farther, but not without crippling the state's budget. The good senator from Pueblo reminded me of that yesterday. And yes, I did say that. And I also said I wasn't willing to roll the dice. Wasn't willing to gamble the people of Colorado's future. If you remember at the time when we passed 233, 108 wasn't on the ballot yet. And I hadn't even dug into what was in Initiative 50. 108, it's a statutory provision. It has no backfill in it. 108 is tied to a section of law, 39-3-210, that repeals on July 1, 2025, and repeals any mandated backfill. 108 would lower the residential assessment to 5.7. 108 would lower the non-residential assessment rate to 24%. 50. Have you all looked at the title of 50? Voter approval to retain additional property tax revenue. That ballot initiative is going to look like this. Shall the voters of the state of Colorado approve to retain additional property tax revenue? I'm pretty sure all of you have been out there just like I've been out there, talking to your constituents at town hall meetings, walking door to door. Heck, I've been traveling the state for the last year. I think it's a no-brainer. They don't want property tax increases. They've had enough. In 50, there is no local opt-out of the cap. In this bill, just to tell you how it's going to work. In 233, and I'm going to use property tax year for 2026. In 233, the implied residential rate would have been 6.5. In this bill, it could be either 6.4 or 6.3. I believe it's going to be 6.4.
In 108, 5.7. In 233, the non-residential assessment rate for commercial and agriculture drops down to 25. For everything else, it takes a couple years for it to get down to 25. In this measure, it drops down to 25 for all non-residential by 2027. We extended 233, added on a little bit more. In 233, we had a 5.5% cap on local government's revenues. In this measure, we have a 5.25% cap on local governments, except for schools, and even in 233, except for schools. We have a 5.25% cap on revenues, but we also had some flexibility dealing with, working through stakeholdering, talking to everybody. We turned that into a 10.5 two-year cycle, based it on the cycles. And we have a whole bunch of exemptions, and local governments can opt out. In 233, we did not have a cap on the school district side. And if you remember, in 233, we decoupled. We decoupled the school districts from all the other local governments to protect education funding. It's plain and simple. To protect education funding. In 108, there aren't any caps in 108. In 50, 4% cap, across the board, statewide, no exemptions, no local government opt-out. In this measure, and look for schools, we have a 6% cap with the two-year cycle, so they can go up to 12%. Plus, we added more flexibility that they could do some carry forward, and they can still opt out. That's the meaningful difference. It sounds small, but that is the meaningful difference for not only all the people in Colorado, but for our local government taxing entities, and our school districts. If either of these measures, 50 or 108, pass, 233 does not go into effect. Homeowners, small business owners will not see that over $1 billion relief from 233. They won't see the additional $1.4 billion relief, that small, meaningful relief. They won't see that. They'll see something in 2026, but they won't get property tax relief when they go to pay their property tax bill next year. If 108 or 50 pass, 233 doesn't go in effect, and what that does is people of Colorado won't receive property tax relief until 2026. And in fact, their property taxes will go up. They will go up because we gave temporary property tax relief, which was good, but it was temporary. Over the last several weeks, we, and I mean a lot of us, wasn't like it was just a few people, it was a lot of us, the governor's office, leadership in both chambers, local governments, everybody had the opportunity to come to the table and help, and we have managed. We have managed to find a way to expand on that historic compromise in 233 and further lower property taxes for both homeowners and businesses while preserving local government services and ensuring services we care about at the state, education, services we care about at the state level, that they will continue. Again, I don't think any senator in this room wants to see the return of the BS factor. And it was no small feat to get local governments and the proponents of Amendments 50 and 108 to agree to this compromise. I've been working on it for 7 weeks. talking to opponents of 50 and 108, talking to proponents of 50 and 108. Let's get everyone back to the table, and let's think about the people of Colorado and what is best for them. And yes, good senator from Jefferson County, I heard you yesterday. I heard you when you were at the microphone. I appreciate your comments. I understand that the fire chiefs are not okay. More than happy to work with them to help them, provide ways, look for ways that they can help effectively manage in their budgets. But again, I've been all over this state for the last year, and the people of Colorado, they're not okay. They are not okay. These huge property tax increases are jeopardizing the well-being of families. It's crippling small businesses. They are not okay. My 94-year-old friend, who has lived in her home for over 60 years, wants to know why her property taxes are increasing so much that she may have to move. She wants to die in that home. So I tell her, I'm down here fighting for more relief for you. Two-parent families, I want you to think about two-parent families who have small children, or any children, because teenagers are really expensive. They're working their tails off to go out with two jobs. They both have jobs. They're working their tails off so that their families, so they can provide for their families. So they're not deciding between property taxes and insurance on their increased value of their home versus taking their kids to the dentist. And I know we all say things like that down here, and we're not just making that up. You have all talked to your constituents. You know it's out there. And what about our small businesses? I want you to think about what they've been through over the course of the last 4 years. They survived COVID. If they survived COVID, now they're facing closing their doors because of increased property taxes. I don't believe that is where any of us want our citizens and our small businesses to be in, the position we want them to be in. So, I appreciate everyone's comments. Truly I do. Let's get what I believe to be the best deal that we can do right now for homeowners, seniors, small businesses, for all property owners, and yes, local governments. I'm still not willing to roll the dice. I'm still not willing to gamble the people's future, and I hope you aren't either. I want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank you for being here, listening with an open heart, and yes, joining us on this journey. It does take all of us. We all need to be here. This is our responsibility. So thank you for coming along on the journey. Mr. President, I renew the motion to approve House Bill 24B 1001, and I ask you all for an aye vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the motion before the body is the adoption of House Bill 24B 1001. Are there any no votes? Senators Baisley, Hinrichsen, Cutter, Jaquez Lewis. With a vote of 30 ayes, 4 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 24B 1001 is passed. Co-sponsors: Senators Pelton B., Liston, Gardner, Minority Leader Lundin, Rich, Will, Pelton R., Exum, Janal, Zenzinger, Fields, Priola, Buckner, please add the president. Will the clerk please read the title of House Bill 24B 1003?
House Bill 24B 1003 by Representative Soper and Joseph and Senators Pirola and Baisley concerning property tax relief for businesses and in connection therewith expanding and extending the exemption for agricultural equipment and machinery used in controlled agricultural facilities.
Senator Priol.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, I move House Bill 1003 on third reading and final passage and ask for an aye vote.
Is there any discussion? Senator Priol.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members, this bill basically is a cleanup of a House Bill in 22, House Bill 22-1301. Two main things it does, or three things. It clarifies the greenhouse. There's some confusion with assessors what a CEA is. Also, to align with the Constitution, it expands it from not just hydroponics, but also hydroponics and soil, and it gets rid of the sunset or the cap on time of taking the not taxing business personal property tax. So ask for an aye vote.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, the motion for the body is the adoption of House Bill 24B 1003. Are there any no votes? Senators Simpson, Pelton R., Pelton B., Liston, Kirkmeyer, Rich, Mullica. Please have the president. With a vote of 26 ayes, 8 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, House Bill 24B 1003 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senators Bridges, Roberts, Van Winkle, the committee to notify the governor that the Senate is ready to adjourn sine die until the next special session is now excused. Please head to the governor's office to meet your counterparts, if there are any, from the House. The Senate will stand in recess until the committee returns. The Senate will come back to order. That's how you know it's serious. Would the committee please report? Committee. Senator Henriksen.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is a wonderful tradition going back to statehood that you, at the end of a session, general or otherwise, that you walk down to the first floor, you go to the governor's office, you meet the governor's office. And in the 21st century, we have technology that makes it unnecessary, but we keep up those traditions. So we walked all the way down to the governor's office, and he wasn't there, so we zoomed him in, which we could have done like literally right here. But nevertheless, we did meet with the governor in spirit, if not in person.
Senator Henriksen, you couldn't have done it here because the governor's not allowed in this room.
Yeah.
Even in Zoom, I would not allow him in this room. Senator Zenzinger.
Thank you, Mr. President. The reason why he was not here is he did not expect the Senate to be as efficient as we were. He didn't realize that we were going to wrap up as quickly as we did. He is en route. He is probably 10 minutes out from the building. But nevertheless, he did share with us congratulations in doing our work and providing tax relief for the citizens. And he appreciated the work of the entire legislature, but most especially Senator Will, the good senator from Newcastle, and then the Senate in general. So just wanted to report out on those important words of wisdom from our governor.
Senator Will.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you. It was a great honor to go do this for me. And like Rachel and I are leaving. But the governor did say he's really going to miss me. And you heard that, right, Rachel?
I was there.
Really going to miss me. So I think that goes unsaid, but I was glad to hear him say it anyway. But, yeah, it was a little awkward being on FaceTime with him. We were supposed to go do this. But, yeah, he was talked a lot about what he's been doing, and appreciate everyone's working here. And I want to thank you for letting me have the honor and the privilege to go do this in my last day here in these chambers. So thank you. And I'm getting a cutoff sign.
Senator Will.
You know, I just mentioned this my last time. And those Fridays, I'd offer those pearls of wisdom. I want to give one little pearl of wisdom, Perry's pearl of wisdom, and that's that always remember that a ringing phone is an invitation, not a command.
On that note, consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Joint Resolution 1?
Senate Joint Resolution 24B1 by Senator Rodriguez and Representative Duran concerning adjournment sine die of the second extraordinary session of the 74th General Assembly.
Majority Leader Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move SJR 001. Do you want to read it, Mike?
Is there any discussion?
I will not request it to be read at length.
Seeing none, the motion is the adoption of Senate Joint Resolution 1. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 34 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 1 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 1 is adopted. Co-sponsors: Senators Zenzinger, Gardner, Priola, Rich, Baisley, Van Winkle, Hansen, Kirkmeyer, Liston, Exum, Marchman, Buckner, Coleman, Fields. Please add the president. Announcements. Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, again, for your possibly final time of the session. It's been an honor to serve with you. I move that the Senate adjourn sine die.
You have heard the motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no? No. The ayes have it, and the Senate will adjourn, hopefully, for the last time in 2024, sine die.